You're listening to Toronto's #1 real estate podcast, powered by Watson Estates. The most successful local real estate investing starts right here, right now. Here's your host, broker, investor, and social media influencer, Bradley Watson.
Good morning, investors. Bradley here from Watson Estates, bright and early, Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020. And I am so excited. I'm happy you could join us here today. And you've come on a good day because this past week we have had some relatively gloomy news, not just the news of people protesting, but not just protesting, but with violent crimes and obviously not applying socially distancing techniques when they're doing so. If you guys go out and protest, go for it. But please be safe out there. Don't hurt anybody's businesses. The rules still apply to you. And when we look on the real estate side, we have seen crazy news as well. We've seen very dire forecasts. We've seen only bad news. And I always sit here kind of reading the news and formulating my thinking. And sometimes I get a little bit concerned for you guys. And maybe you're seeing that I am generally optimistic, at least right now. There's been times in our past when I wasn't as optimistic, of course. But in the last few weeks, I've certainly been optimistic, but it's been very difficult to show the optimism when I'm reading the news because the news has been awfully rough. But here's the thing, guys. We are in a new month, and what that means is statistics are starting to come out that are able to fill in the blanks. I've been telling you how I've been feeling the market has been doing and what I've been experiencing with clients out there. And finally, we're starting to see a very slow drip of info on what exactly did happen in May. Not what people said was happening in May and what people thought would happen, but in fact, what is happening. And that news is good news. And so I'm excited to share that with you today. Are Toronto home sales now moving upwards? Not only now moving upwards, but continuing to move upwards. So we're going to talk about that first. That's the good stuff. And then we're going to cover a solution, step one, phase one of the solution to this crisis municipalities have been facing for some time now. The federal government has finally said, we're going to give $2.2 billion to municipalities. Now they have a creative way of doing that. And I want to ask, is it enough of a bailout to save our beautiful city of Toronto? And then we're going to talk about rental rates continuing to drop. Will this be the case, or are we going to see much like we did in the ownership side of real estate where there's been kind of a rebound happening? Are we going to see that as well in rentals, or is this thing still dropping like a sack of potatoes? So we're going to cover all of this thing. We are #1 in Google Podcasts for Toronto real estate. Thank you for joining us. You guys make this place awesome, and the comments are great. And the love and support and messages, even personal messages saying, hey, Brad, like I got one yesterday saying, I hope your pregnant wife is doing good. She is 3 weeks away from full delivery. We are due June 21st. So we've got a bunch going on in my personal life as well. And so I love being able to connect with you guys. And we're really creating a family and a bond here every morning on Toronto's #1 real estate podcast. So thank you. Now, as it relates to Toronto real estate, sometimes I told you so just isn't good enough. And I'm so happy. This is the first piece of news that has some statistics behind it. And it actually comes from my buddy, John Pasalis. He's the president of Philosophy Realty, one of my favorite reporters. He's not a reporter. He's not a reporter, but he does such good news, like not good news, but up-to-date news, fact-based, relevant news that I love listening to what he has to say because he's often a first mover in a world that is often delayed. Like I'm still seeing articles talking about what CMHC had to say a week and a half ago. Catch up with the times, people. And so here is our first little drip in the bucket to show you what to expect when the stats come out probably later this week from the Toronto Real Estate Board. Listen to this. This comes from TorontoStories.com. Toronto home sales continue to move upwards in the last month of the pandemic, jumping from a low of -73 year over year in the mid-April to, quote, just -40 year over year in late May. Guys, let's not forget that when we're comparing May, we are comparing the highest month in the year. We're not just comparing against April to April. We are comparing against May. Historically is a very solid month. It's the month of the year. It's the highest price. It's the highest activity. It's the month. And yet we've gone from a -73 in April and climbed out of this hole where we're now at -40. That's a substantial jump. And while a 40% dip in year-over-year sales might not seem like something to celebrate, clearly I'm celebrating it. It certainly implies that buyers previously put off of COVID may now feel better entering the market. As well, a nearly 35% uptick from rock bottom is definitely something to get excited about if you're considering entering the market. Well, I wonder where they got the term rock bottom for. I wonder if they've been listening to our podcast. Because we had a video that said we are no longer in rock bottom prices. We were documenting this. This has to be almost a month ago now. Like at least a month ago, we were talking about this. And so he's got this is a shaking my head moment. I'm John, why you gotta do this to me, man? You and me both, we're in this together. We've been tracking this thing. We know this is happening. And yet this is what he goes on the record to say. I don't know too many people who are predicting that Toronto's real estate market would be heating up so quickly, but here we are. John, come on, buddy. You're killing me here. We've been talking about this. We've been seeing this. We're seeing it in our marketplace. We're seeing showings picking up. We're seeing activity picking up. Is this going to happen forever? I don't know. But has there been growth? Absolutely. And John knows this. You know better, man. Come on. You're one of the best. Pasalis also notes that new listings increased steadily throughout May, though not at enough of a pace to keep up with current buyers, hence the market beginning to heat up. Okay, so remember this balance between supply and demand. We've been talking what's going to come first, the supply or the demand. Well, it would seem, as it were, that demand is picking up faster than supply, which is kind of what I kind of thought would happen. And it's interesting to see new listings were once at a low of minus 68 year over year in the GTA, quite substantial, have risen in early May at the end of the month to minus 36. So we saw in a matter of a month, cut in pretty much half. In just a few short weeks, listings nearly doubled. And then we've got listings tailing behind it. Because you know what's happening out there, guys? The people who are selling these units that are starting to see the tight supply crisis that's happening in the short term, I'm talking people putting their listings down, getting multiple offers, and everyone's out there saying, nothing good is going to happen. Everything's falling apart. We're all going to crash. Prices are going to end minus 12%. Just listen to CMHE. They know what they're talking about. But then we got someone who's got a listing in the city and they've got 20 offers. And guess what? Those same people are going to turn around a week later and have another client, and they're going to be educating them to say, guess what, guys? We're going to be positioning ourselves for multiple offers as well. And so what ends up happening is this spiral even happens before the stats come out. Like, as much as you sometimes hate realtors, that's fine. That's okay. They're biased. But here's the thing. They know what's going on, especially the active agents know what is going on in the marketplace. They get this feeling that we've been feeling for the last month, and now the numbers are showing it. Now, as far as, so this is actually a quote, I believe this is from Pasalis as well. This is on a Twitter thread. Condos are following the market overall. There's not a lot of divergence across house types yet. The one change is that condos were a lot hotter than low-rise pre-pandemic, but there's now a bit softer than low-rise. So this is interesting. If you didn't catch it, what he said, what I've been saying even, is that it seems as though the condos, the little taste of heaven up in the sky, your 32nd floor with your condo balcony overlooking the water, so pretty, so nice. Well, here's the thing. They've taken the biggest hit, and we've been seeing that in the stats. So what he is saying is actually valid. Those were the hottest product in town pre-COVID. So maybe it's not so much that they're getting crushed so much as that buying frenzy that was going on has slowed down. Whoa, that was a combination of slow down and stop. That slopped. It has slopped in both ways. I'm sorry. I sometimes get really tongue-tied. My brain thinks faster. My brain talks faster than my mouth can think sometimes. But these insights come on the back of a sober week in real estate news that saw several agencies, including CMHC, making stern forecasts for the Canadian housing market. Thank you. Thank you. Finally. Thank you. The stats will prevail, people. Stupid realtors out there talking about the positive news. Why don't they wait for those stats? Well, if you waited for the stats, we should maybe not have been listening to some of these news outlets in the last week or so. But good news is good news, and I'm going to go with it. I hope you guys are as pumped up about this as I am. And here's the thing. Sometimes it's very difficult when I'm putting these podcasts to figure out what's the best story, because today we got two best stories. The next best story because I did put them in order, so I guess this is in my mind the next best story. But also almost as good is this idea of the federal government providing a bailout to municipalities. Does this sound familiar? The video we did last week, I even said I posted it on Monday. I wrote it on Monday, posted on Wednesday. I'm like, I sure hope they don't announce anything between now and Wednesday, because that would have been super awkward. Luckily, they didn't. So I got my 2 cents in there, and we were calling for people to reach out to your MPs, reach out to your MPPs, because your city is severely underwater. Well, finally, they've gotten through to Mr. Justin Trudeau, and he has announced that the federal government will be offering cities an advance transfer of $2.2 billion in infrastructure money to help cover COVID-19 prompted budget shortfalls as the start of the month marks the beginning of more regional reopenings. So here's what they're doing, okay? They have a 2020-2021 fund that was from the federal gas tax fund, and will be made in a single payment this month rather than spread out over a 2-year payment. So instead of giving more money, what they're doing is they're giving money up front. It kind of feels like a deferral. They're essentially giving a deferral to the municipalities. It provides more than $2 billion a year to 3,600 communities across Canada, with the amount each city receives varying, obviously, based on the size of the city, I would assume, and I'm sure there's other factors. The funds flow from the federal government through the provinces and territories to the local level for infrastructure projects. So what's that total? That price tag is $2.2 billion. The money's often directed, by the way, for this into 18 different categories. It goes into public transit, wastewater infrastructure, local roads and bridges, disaster mitigation, broadband connectivity, culture, tourism, and recreation. And so here's the thing. When we were talking to Mayor Crombie a week and a half ago, that was one of the things she actually hinted at. So she must have known about this back then, because she said, oh, there's other ways for the government to send more money. And she talked about this idea of doing it through water, wastewater, and infrastructure. She talked about that. I didn't know what that meant, but this is obviously what she meant. What they're doing is they have money budgeted for these municipalities, and they're just giving it to them in advance, letting them spend it how they will. And so this comes after the pressure from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. They asked for, check this price tag out, $15 billion in assistance. $15 billion. Not $2.2 billion, $15 billion. Guys, we're talking 15% of what's been asked for has come out. So obviously, even though Justin Trudeau acknowledges there's a cash crunch and that it's crucial, there's obviously a shortfall as far as what we need. And when we say we, I mean the municipalities and the respective cities. The Prime Minister noted that Monday's announcement, it is a, quote, a start. It's a start, okay? But said there will be coming to help businesses and communities safely reopen to ensure essential services and supports with communities provide will remain intact. So I sure hope he holds to that. It's a start. And here's the thing. The mayors, I've seen several mayors, even across Ontario, and I've seen the opposition leadership all going to hold him accountable to this, guys. We are seeing a step in the right direction if the direction we wanted was bailouts. That's what we guessed. That's what I guessed. And so will that continue, and what will that look like? And provinces in some cases have stepped up. Here in Ontario, they have not at all. And so they said, we respect the Constitution that said it is up to provinces to manage and fund municipalities. But at the same time, we've looked for ways where we can make direct contributions. So in other words, it was really Ford's job to help you guys legally, according to the Constitution. But you know what? We're feeling nice. We feel like we should help you guys. And it's important that we get involved and help the municipalities. But here's the thing. The province has been begging. The cities have been begging the province has been begging the feds. And the feds, well, I guess they don't have to beg. All they got to do is print money. It's a lot easier for them. But here's the thing. John Tory, he said, reacting to the announcement, in Toronto's case, it's actually estimated, by the way, that we have a $1.5 billion loss. Okay? He said, I'm not trying to diminish what they are doing today, which will help a bit, but we need a lot more help. They know that. It is crucial to the proper economic recovery of this country that cities should be healthy and not in a situation of financial instability. I agree with him. So do many other mayors. We've seen in this article alone, City of Ottawa. We see one from Kitchener. They're all very strong. And then, as mentioned, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is pretty much saying he wants his party to see a direct funding to cover operating costs, acknowledging it's not like water and transit and travel. Like, we don't need money in our cities for tourism. No offense to anybody who works in the tourism industry, but that's not necessary, right? We need money for operating expenses. And he said what cities have made very clear is that they are facing a massive shortfall in funding, which will mean losing employees and losing the ability to deliver services. So in this way, I actually see the NDP standing on the side of municipalities. Support them in the way that they're asking to be supported. And of course, when we look at the provincial, Andrew Scheer, who's on his way out the door anyways, pretty much says that the Liberals have a, quote, terrible record for getting infrastructure spending out the door. So we're going to wait and see. So I expect, based on these promises, based on the history that we're seeing, how fast money is walking out the door these days, that you're going to see additional funding be provided from the federal government to the municipalities. And hopefully that allows some certainty for the province to get involved as well. Like now the province has no excuse to sit on their hands anymore. Get yourselves moving. Get off your tushy. I guess Doug Ford's been out and about. He's not hiding. It's really Trudeau who's sitting on his tushy. But anyways, hopefully the province steps up too. And all the while, we also, just as a side announcement, just to kind of encourage you guys as well, and for any of you who have landlords who have tenants that are kind of tight, there was an announcement that Ontario is going to support struggling electricity bills during COVID. So there's something called an energy assistance program. They're going to have $9 million for that. That helps people that can't pay their bills. There's $8 million for helping small businesses. They've added an extension where you can't actually kick anybody out. It's funny because we've got a ban on evictions, which we see as landlords, but there's actually a ban on disconnecting your electricity. So it sounds like they're in the same boat. Do I feel as bad for them? No. Does it apply to me? No. Obviously, I'm biased on that one, but they're not allowed to disconnect them at this point till July 31st. And what it does apply to everybody is that you can continue the time of use thing, the rates starting on June 1st, it will continue. So you're not going to get charged for doing your laundry in the afternoon while you are working digitally. Okay. So there's some good news, helping municipalities, helping your pocketbooks, helping your renters' pocketbooks, or if you're the renter, helping your own pocketbooks, or the landlord's pocketbooks. Everybody's happy. Bailouts all around. Woo! So now I want to talk about the other side, the more grim side. We're going to talk about rental rates. We're going to talk about what is coming for rental rates. All this optimism, all this good news in our real estate market, does it translate to anything substantial for our renters? Well, I'll tell you right now, no. I'm sorry, it is not. And I thought, what a better way. I got a great comment from Daniel on YouTube. Thank you, Daniel, for the comment. This is the love and support. He's kind of well-wishing myself and my pregnant wife. And he's saying he hasn't been able to comment, but he had a few questions. So I said, all right, I'll take this up in our next podcast. Let's do it. So here's his questions. Lately, there has been a lot of unrest in the U.S. I'm wondering what you think. Ignoring politics, thank you for that. I appreciate that because I don't want to get too far into there. How this will affect the Canadian market. Well, here's my thinking. We have seen in the recent past, now I'm not an economist, by the way. I'm definitely not an economist, but I'm tracking the news. And hopefully a lot of these people that listen to our podcast are too. And we've seen Canadian dollars actually been getting stronger, but really we've seen a US dollar that's losing power. And so our purchasing power is going up. Now, we rely heavily on the global success. We are very much a global city. We're the global community. All the countries are, especially the US. So to see the pain that the US is going through right now, that's not a good thing for us. It's not. In the short term, what we're going to have to rely on here in our real estate market is the buyers, and we've already seen this in the statistics, are going to need to come from local. Now, maybe there's a bunch of Canadians that are in outside countries that have come back to try and replace that immigration for the year. But ultimately, the purchasing is going to be local demand. Now, in the long term, I would agree that Canada has kind of set itself up once again as a top destination on the world stage. And so I expect that this is going to mean a flip the other way and immigration will continue to go back up. But we're already seeing a falling off currently of foreign investment in Canada, all thanks to our foreign buyer taxes that were implemented not that long ago. That actually already did a number in foreign investment. So really people buying here now are locals or people who want to move here, which is great. There's a lot of money that comes here, which is great. Now, hopefully we're not getting people who are in the refugee status. Now, we need to take care of refugees, but they're not going to accelerate our prices. What they end up doing is going into the rental market, which is why I positioned this question here. It lines up perfectly. He also asked, do you think more Americans will eventually move to Canada, or less Canadians will migrate south and slow down the brain drain. I actually, on this argument of brain drain, I actually have heard that the brain drain actually is coming into Canada. So it's actually a brain gain, especially as it relates to technology. We're seeing a lot of Americans who have been threatened, their citizenship or lack thereof has been threatened in the United States, and they've been moving here, and we've been seeing a boost in that segment. Now, real estate markets around the world are getting beat up, and ours is doing surprisingly well, as we just heard. We have a safe banking system and a very high standard of living, and those things are going to contribute to the continued acceleration in immigration in the long term. Now, additionally, with the American elections coming up, do you think the winner will have an effect on Canada's real estate market? I love it. He's like, we're going to talk about politics, but what do you think about the politics? That's okay. I'll give my 2 cents here. I don't think that it's going to matter all that much. Bernie Sanders, he freaked me out before COVID, but now we're kind of two sides of the same coin. Either party's doing the same thing. Realistically, Donald Trump might as well be a socialist himself right now. And the amount of money that they're printing and sending out, everybody seems to be in the same pickle. So whether it's Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, Bernie Sanders. Woo! Almost had a heart attack there. Slow down. Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, two sides to the same coin in my book. And ultimately, this is where we're going to segue into rentals. Immigration has a severe impact, not so much on our market anymore, more so on our rental market. Here's an article that came from Remax, funny enough, but I grabbed one little segment because I thought they did a good job explaining the rentals, what's been going on. And COVID-19 has dealt a sharp blow to Toronto's landlords, particularly those operating short-term rentals, who now find themselves over-leveraged and vulnerable, So we know this whole struggle with Airbnb and the tourism industry. But here's the thing. They said, and I agree with this, closing the U.S./Canada border and the imposed stay-at-home measures, the demand for short-term rentals disappeared overnight. So when I'm kind of thinking, how have we been impacted by COVID and everything that's kind of going on, we're already actually seeing that playing out. And I think that the good thing about COVID is everyone is kind of stationed in their home. Some aren't. There's obviously exceptions to the rule, but generally people are home. And yeah, that's my thoughts on that. That the stay-at-home measures is affecting our short-term rental market, and if not, which is ultimately going to affect our long-term rental market if it doesn't get corrected. Pre-COVID, we saw 2% vacancies. Obviously, that's shot through the roof. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's definitely doubled, like 4 or 5%, I'm thinking. Since the closure of non-essential businesses across the city in late March, many tenants are struggling to make rent payments, which is putting downward pressure on demand for a brief period of time, even after protection measures have been lifted. This extra supply flooding the rental market, coupled with depressed demand levels, means there is a potential for average rental rates to decline within the GTA. And so I'm like, you know what? You're right. I agree. That's true. And so just to give you a little bit of proof, the proof really is going to come out when the Trev stats come out. But in the meantime, Daily Hive published an article. They got this report from, I don't even know what these guys are called, live.rent or something like that. I don't know how legitimate this source is, but what they did is they compiled the rentals across the GTA, and the article is called Rent Prices Dropped in Most GTA Regions in May. Most GTA regions experienced a rent decline in May, according to a recent report by the rental listing website live.rent. From April to May, North York saw the biggest rent decrease of unfurnished listings. So it's not just the furnished guys. It's also the unfurnished taking the hit by pretty much 8%. And Etobicoke down 7.59, Markham down 7.35, and Toronto down 6.96 downtown. Brampton's the only spot that saw an increase, 3.4%. Hashtag escape Brampton. And so ultimately, generally, we're seeing a decreasing in rent, which has been expected. And I think that with a strong upward trend, so when I look, sorry, let me backtrack. That was just a note. What I wanted to say here is this upward trend we're seeing in our marketplace for resale units and hopefully eventually pre-construction units, that effect is not happening in the rental space. It's not the same thing. It's two different markets right now, and the rental space is still getting a beating. There's no signs of recovery, at least from what I have seen in the rental space. It's going to be rough, and so it's going to separate the big investors from the small investors. That's going to be the ultimate result of everything. These are some of my thoughts as we look at the news. This week, I'm so excited because, obviously I've got a pregnant wife, so pending, I'm not sitting in the hospital, they're going to be announcing the Treb stats. And if you want to get the latest scoop, there's no better place to do it than here on Toronto's #1 real estate podcast, because I want to know about it the moment it happens, and I'm going to make sure you guys do as well. In the meantime, may your Zoom calls be uninterrupted and your businesses be unlooted. I'll see you tomorrow morning with more. Take care and keep it real.